Well, it seems that President Trump has some competition on Twitter. He's defending his immigration proposal from this stinging tweet by conservative commentator Ann Coulter. She says, quote, "Trump proposes amnesty. We voted for Trump and got Jeb." Well, the president is pushing back on that, saying, quote, "No, amnesty is not a part of my offer. It's a 3-year extension of DACA. Amnesty will be used only on a much bigger deal, whether on immigration or something else. Likewise, there will be no big push to remove the 11 million plus people who are here illegally. But be careful, Nancy." Who's right? Rick Unger. Radio talk show host John Hancock, also a talk show host, former Missouri Republican chairman. So, John, I mean, what is the impact of Ann Coulter's continued criticism, do you think?
Well, I don't think much. The Trump base is much less ideological than it is the Trump base. And Donald Trump has a very strong layer of support in the country. The folks that are going to be on the furthest side of the immigration debate, I think, are a relatively small chunk of the Trump base. And I don't think this hurts Donald Trump and his base at all. In fact, I think him coming to the table to try and end this shutdown is a very positive development.
Rick, do you buy that?
In some respects, yeah. I think John's got a point. Most of the Trump base is not necessarily as far to the right as people like Ann Coulter, but this was just so predictable. Look, the president went into this entire thing knowing that the majority of the country, yes, his base is certainly with him on the wall, but the majority of the country wasn't. So it was imperative for him to bring them around. He had to find 10% more people to join his side. Hasn't happened. Then you knew that eventually he would get to the DACA issue. DACA is even tougher for him because not only do you have more of the country opposing what he initially did by ending DACA, I mean, the numbers went as high as 70 to 90% of Americans opposed. Now you've got people saying, well, wait a second, you're using a bargaining chip that you created, which wasn't a problem to begin with, and those numbers are higher. And you bring in the criticism from the far right. And we know that this president is susceptible to that criticism. I think he has dug a very difficult political hole for himself.
So John, I mean, how does he then weave that needle? I mean, to get the Democrats on board, and they're not, despite his proposal on DACA and temporary status.
Sure. The reality is that Donald Trump's the only side in this thing that has come over some. Nancy Pelosi hasn't budged. And I will tell you that the no deal caucus is on both sides. And it's a small chunk of the population. I think the president is showing real leadership here by coming to the table, offering a 3-year extension of DACA. And if the Democrats won't negotiate now, I think you'll begin to see the public opinion begin to flip on them. And I think the president's in a better place on message right now than he was before the statement on Friday.
And John, here's the problem I got to point out. While you're absolutely right, is that he is starting to make some moves. The president and the Democrats in Congress aren't yet budging. The president hasn't come to where the majority of the Americans are. And until he can get there, I don't know how he finds a way to crack the wall in Congress. He's got to get to where the people are. So far, that hasn't happened.
Well, you know, we talk about citizenship, but what about legal status, John, or just a legal status for them at this point in time?
Well, the 3-year DACA extension is not a path to citizenship, and I think it would be a mistake to do that. You really can't begin to address those issues until you've really secured the border. And that's kind of where we are here. I think the fact that Pelosi and Schumer are intransigent, they're not moving, they're not coming, I think that's going to look very bad in the eyes of the majority of the American people out there. And I think they're running a risk of losing the public relations battle on this thing. And if they do, it seems to me like there's a pretty simple fix here. You got $5.7 billion ask. Split the difference. Let the president have some border security and, yes, wall money. Let the Democrats say we stopped him from building a wall across the entire southern border. Both sides walk away with a win. You open the government, and it's $5 billion.
Yeah, but John, what about those who blame the president, John, who say that it's his fault? He's the executive.
And he said that he was
responsible. John, go ahead.
Okay, so I think the president is moving towards the middle here, and I think that's clear. I think he's opened the door for negotiation. The Democrats have been completely silent. They've been completely unwilling to move, and I think that is a bad look for the American people, and I think they're ultimately going to pay a price for this.
Rick, final word.
I'm afraid I don't agree. If the American people in the majority start to come over to the president's point of view, then I'm going to agree with John. But the reality is, yes, you can deal with DACA without dealing with the border. We've done it. This president chose to go a different way. Now he wants to go back on that to get the deal he wants to get. You cannot sidestep the wishes of the American people in the desire to try and throw blame either on the Democrats or on the Republicans. The people are going to decide, and the president has not yet, saying yet, succeeded in bringing the majority of the American public along with him.
I reckon, John, that might be the last word, and I'll still just look out for those tweets. Thank you.